If you are moved by stories about Auschwitz, if you seek to better understand history, or are looking for a real confession from someone who's actually been there, this is the book for you. Hi, I'm Maria from Read Fine Books, and today we are talking about A Gypsy in Auschwitz by Otto Rosenberg. This book is the survival story of a 9-year-old who first faces eviction in an enclosed encampment in Berlin and afterwards is sent to various labor camps for Jews and Gypsies, including the one in Auschwitz. However, more than for Jews, his troubles don't end with the war. So let's begin. I'm first going to talk a little bit about the political and social context surrounding the Romani population before and during the World War II. Starting January 1933, things dramatically deteriorate for the German population of Romani people. The orders that directly affect Jews also apply to the Romani population. Everything affects them almost equally. They were banned from working, and afterwards they were actually accused of being unwilling to work. Starting in 1935, the Romani population was sent to encampments near big cities. These were, in fact, labor camps. There they had inhumane conditions. A lot of them actually died from these conditions. One labor camp where Otto Rosenberg was as well was the Marzahn labor camp near Berlin. The conditions there were as awful as in any other labor camp. He actually talks about all the people that died there, but even more than that, this is another thing that happened. Listen a bit. After the founding of the Racial Hygiene and Demographic Biology Research Institute, personal information related to all Sinti and Roma at the Marzahn camp were collected under the direction of the Dr. Robert Ritter and his assistant, the nurse Eva Justin. The law enforcement authorities would later use this information to assign individuals for compulsory sterilization and admission to concentration camps. I also need to add that in total, around 500,000 Sinti and Roma fell victim to the Nazis' frenzy of racial hatred. 500,000, that is terrible. Let's get into the plot of the book. So this is the story of Otto Rosenberg. He tells of the time when he was a child. He was 9 years old when it all changed for him and his family. Otto is Sinti. Sinti is a subgroup of the Romani people living in Germany. As I said, we get to know him as a young boy. He is very happy. He is poor but strives to be clean and to learn things in school. He also does anything he can to earn a bit of money and help out his family. His father was a horse dealer and his mother was a housewife. But they end up divorcing, and Otto is sent to live with his grandmother in Berlin. In Berlin, with his grandmother, he lived in a trailer park. This was a gated, privately owned land. He lived there in a trailer along with a lot of other trailers, and their community was very close-knit. They all took care of each other and the children played together. The women made a living peddling goods and telling fortunes, while the men wove baskets, crafted tables and chairs from wood timber and decorated cabinets. Later, all of that was banned. They were forced into compulsory labor and received welfare payments instead. As I said, we start with his beautiful childhood, and one day in 1936, all this changes. All Romani people were moved into a vacant land, the Berlin Martin Rastplatz. Otto is 9 years old. Everyone is forced to live there in a filthy place surrounded by a sewage camp, so we can all imagine the smells there. This is a place none of them would have picked to live because it went against their religious beliefs. Even more, children are barred from entering public schools. They had previously been all enrolled, and now they were just taken out, and they all attended what should have been a school there in the camp. However, there was one teacher to a whole lot of children of every age, and they basically just learned to read and did basic math. There was, in fact, no other education. Even with this, his life goes on. He manages quite well. He talks about all the people that died in that camp. He talks about the graves that are still there today. But his life being a child was acceptable there. However, at 13, Otto has to leave school because he has to start working to take care of his family. So at his workplace, when he sees a shiny object, he actually tries to steal it. The leadership there sees him and they send him to jail. That is the beginning of his hardship in jail, and after he gets out, he's directly sent to concentration camps, among which at 16 is the Auschwitz concentration camp. As one would expect, life there is terrible, and Otto describes it all. The lice problem, the food shortage, the clothes shortage. He is left with no clothes in winter, no way to even put shoes on. But the biggest challenge is his loneliness because there the family members are divided. They don't get in contact with each other. Everyone is just living for himself. Everyone it turns incredibly selfish because they are all one meal away from starving, and um, this desensitizes everyone. Slowly, they become immune to suffering. They become even void of emotion when seeing corpses all around. No one has a sense of right and wrong anymore. So, this book is not at all for the faint hearted. It is difficult to describe what the horrors in the camp did to everyone. It is even more difficult to believe it. However, for the Romani people, things didn't pick up after the war. The German authorities took advantage of their lack of literacy, and they actively did whatever they could to prevent them from gaining the monetary compensation they were entitled to. Even the Martin camp near Berlin was actually declared a labor camp only in 1987, so many years after the war ended. All this made me mad and sad. I felt indignant and powerless. Yes, I understood how authorities can leave you powerless when it suits them, and minorities were always discriminated uh, throughout history, but the Romani people are still discriminated today. Their history hasn't changed a lot since the war. They still have a terrible time integrated in any European country today. They are still mostly marginalized and discriminated against. Otto's history is also very impressive. He manages to survive Auschwitz without his conscience bugging him later. He says that this is something not a lot of people were able to say after uh, getting out of there, because the degree of dehumanizing there was terrible. And by the end of it all, they were all capable of heinous things just to survive. He, however, managed to forgive them all. He managed to become detached from that experience. He says that he later understood he was experimented on as a child, but he only saw the kindness of those doctors because they were all good and polite while experimenting, and the experiment weren't painful in any way. So he feels that counts and forgives it all. A thing I loved about him was the pride he had throughout this whole ordeal, the commitment to help others whenever he could, the commitment to help them after the experience was over. He did lots of things for the survivors. He made me hopeful of surpassing everything in life with the head held high. His writing inspired me to judge less and forgive more. He was an incredible man, and I loved reading his story. This is a beautifully written book about forgotten horrors, because even though the ordeal of Jewish people is recognized and talked about, that of Romani people is never discussed, and it should be acknowledged in the same way. If you seek to understand a different culture, a discriminated culture, I think this is the book for you. You'll be amazed at how many things you see differently afterwards. I'm Maria from Read Fine Books. Thank you for watching.